Welcome to Blue Glasses Math. In this podcast, we will explore how our self-perception as math teachers and learners influences our approach to life. Whether you identify as a math enthusiast or not, this podcast is for you. Are you a teacher, a parent, a school administrator, or a student? Join me as we shift our perspective on what it means to be a math person. Let's take a look. Well, hello, Jennifer Lempp, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Pam. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited. I kind of wish we had hit record before we were having all this banter beforehand, and I just feel like I have this amazing connection with you already, and I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Thanks, Pam. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, like, oh, maybe we should have hit record because now I'll have to remember all the things that we were talking about.
Yeah, well, hopefully
share them again.
We can prompt one another as we go. One of the things I think that the humanness of this is pointing out that we both have teenagers and dogs in the house. So, you know what? If we hear background noise, that it is what it is. This is life.
Yes, it's still our summer. The kids haven't come back to school yet, so it's also the three teenagers and the mess everywhere. Yes.
Yes, I have my own mess here at my desk, and then there's the mess. Anyway, okay. So speaking of mess, I always start every episode with asking my guests to talk about what their math story is, and really like what led you to this point, and what moments along your journey shaped how you think about math, teaching and learning math?
Yeah, when I think about the journey I took, I feel like it's been a really long one. When I go all the way back to very young, the oldest of four, I was like the person who would play teacher. And so I'd make my three siblings sit there along with a lot of stuffed animals. And, I was playing teacher, but I really didn't try to teach math at that time. It was around that third or fourth grade when I really started to feel like I wasn't good at math. Up until then, I just loved the idea of being a teacher, and I still liked going to school. But it was during the memorization of our times tables. And I remember so clearly needing to stand up at a teacher's desk and recite your times facts. Ooh. And you had to be able to say them quickly and accurately, and you would go up there and you'd say, like, with confidence, I'm ready for my threes, or I'm ready for my fours today. And when you got them, you got a star for your star chart. And I had memorized that 7 times 8 is 58. I had that memorized. So, well, it's not. So, unfortunately, I wasn't getting my star for my 7 or my 8. And those empty boxes on that chart just glared at me. And that was that first time where I thought, maybe I'm not good at this. Maybe it's not capable. It's not possible for me. I had already had those moments of time during Around the World where I wasn't necessarily a fast processor. I was still solving the problems, but a little bit slower. Those moments in Around the World where I didn't move a single seat. Those things that started to weigh on me, and they started to get inside your head.
Yes.
Yeah, and as that confidence kind of went down, I really stopped feeling like math was for me. And that was as a student. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember very clearly copying math homework from a boy who had his locker next to mine in high school because I was too nervous to be able to do it alone at home. I didn't have the confidence to do it. And this is, before cell phones where I could phone a friend in and FaceTime with them or
photo math.
Photo math. I couldn't do any of that. So I would show up and hope that he had his homework done, and he always did. And I would quickly copy all of his work for my math class in high school. And that feeling of I can't do it by myself. I needed somebody's help. And I needed this boy to help me with math. That was kind of ingrained in my head. Mm-hmm. When I consider then how that impacted me as a teacher, I loved my students. I loved my class. In those first couple of years of teaching, you feel like you're going to make all the difference in the world. What I didn't love was teaching math. In fact, it was my least favorite subject to teach. And when I think about how that probably really came from that feeling of, well, if I'm not good at math, how can I be good at teaching it? And so I taught in a very traditional way. Those first several years of teaching, it was very much the pull out at the time, silver Burdette gin or gin or whatever that.
Yes. Oh, yes. I think mine was green.
Oh my God. Mine was blue. I remember so clearly. And pretty much like that, it was the Bible of going through the class. It was page by page by page, and I just followed it.
Yeah.
And I felt so frustrated. I felt so upset with myself. I felt like I couldn't teach well. I felt like I didn't know my kids. I felt like I was beating my head up against the wall. And I slowly started to say, like, I need to do something different. I need my class day to look different. And so I started playing around with what was working in other subject areas, what I felt good about, and reframing what math class could be. And I slowly started making some changes that made me a lot more confident, made me start to like math. And for the first time, some of my students started to like math too. And it was in some of that transformation that certainly did not happen overnight. This was, years in the making, that I started to become more aware that through my own knowledge of math and through getting to know students and playing around with not keeping math the same way it's always been or the way I had it framed in my mind, that I could do something different. So it was through a lot of learning. It was through just a lot of learning, a lot of growth that I tried to, that I guess I started to feel better and I started to change things. It was years later that I ended up becoming a math coach in a building. And I felt like one of the benefits of coaching others was that acknowledgement that I'm not asking us to try anything together that, I didn't go through myself, the transformation. I guess I say all of this because in that span of, teaching and not being good at math, not feeling good at math. I should never say I wasn't good at math.
You were feeling.
I didn't feel good at math. And then moving to becoming a coach and working with others on their transformation and on their reflection of kind of their impact that their feeling as a student has had on them as a teacher. And then moving into now doing what I do, which is working with teachers around the country on their math instruction. It's one of the greatest pleasures ever is just getting to know other people, seeing what works in other places, what doesn't work in all, and being able to be a part of their journey, whether it was a bumpy one like mine, or whether it was like somebody who's always loved math and is just looking for a way to be more efficient and effective. I just feel like I feel for people who only see math as something that is unreachable or only see math as something that is going to be really hard or too difficult. All teaching is difficult.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
All teaching is challenging.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what's going to work for a room full of 20 plus kids. And, and that might not be what was going on last year too.
100%. Yes.
So mine was a bumpy one. I certainly have transformed over time. And now if you had told, 20-year-old, if you had told like 10-year-old me, if you had told 25-year-old me, quite honestly, even like as I approached my 30s, like if you had told me then that I would be on a podcast about math and I would be like writing books and like talking to others about math, I would have thought you were crazy. It was definitely the thing I felt the least confident in at the time.
Well, I have so much to reflect back from what you just say. Thank you for sharing your story. Okay, I have so much to reflect back, but the last point that you said about being on a podcast about math, My friends make fun of me because we called them calculus parties. I mean, I was in like the higher level math, but it was so stressful. And when I started college, I was an English major. I won't go into my whole story, but I was an English major. And so I was just on Zoom with a group of my girlfriends from high school last night. I happened to put my blue glasses on. They're like, oh, there she goes with her blue glasses. And they just all think it's so funny because they're like, you were so stressed about math. And here now you are hosting a podcast and doing all these things about math.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, but I think I'm going to tie it back into some of the things that you said that I jotted down some notes. So you said at one point, like, you didn't feel like you were getting to know your kids when you were teaching from that Silver Burdette book, right? And you said, I didn't know my kids. And I kind of I'm getting a pulse from you that you're a very empathetic person, and that empathy wasn't able to come through with the traditional way that you had been exposed to as a child in math class, and what maybe you were handed in terms of a curriculum or book, is that it's those pieces of empathy. But I also want to talk about that 7 times 8 equals 58. So that the 7 times 8, what is it about that? And it's like the worst one.
It sounds better, right? 7 times 8 is 58. It totally sounds it better. Yeah, it made sense to me at the time.
Exactly.
Because I didn't have a strategy to figure it out or to like recognize that wouldn't make sense.
You're like, oh, it just sounds like it would like roll off your tongue, which is pretty much what we were being asked to do. You and I are probably around the same age, and like we were being asked to do that. It's just like make it sound like it sounds good, right? Does it make sense?
Well, and it was about memorizing. None of it made sense. It was like, how much can you memorize?
Yes.
And up until a certain age, I felt like I could memorize things. Yeah. And then it was like everything just kind of fell apart in my head, or some things started to fall apart. And it wasn't as clear, and it wasn't as easy to hold all of the things. Yes. And then you're like, well, when I don't have anything else, then that must mean I'm not good at math. But all it really was I wasn't good at memorizing math.
Yes.
That's all.
That's it. That's it. I love that. What a great point. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we're right, exactly, and like the public piece of that too. So this is where I'm going to tie into the work that you're currently doing. So the public, like almost, I don't want to say shaming. Maybe shaming is the word, right? Is that for the kids who are good at memorizing, for them it might have been their aha, like their gold star moment, literally, like figuratively and literally, because they were getting that gold star.
Right.
They were publicly in front of the class showing what they were capable of, whereas other kids get up there at that moment and think about all the emotions that come through that actually cloud the ability to recall what 7 times 8 actually equals.
Right.
And then it becomes part of like their self, right? Of like, well, I'm just not good at it. Yeah. So anyway, that was just a really interesting. I noticed that. So anyway, so let's get into one of my favorite books. I have a bunch of books behind me on my bookshelf. I've got all the books, any book you could possibly imagine about math education, Math Workshop. So is this your first book?
That was, yes,
your very first book. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I picked this book up a couple of years ago, maybe at a conference. I'm not sure even where I got it. I don't know, but I coach teachers, and same as you, I travel around to different schools, and what I find is that teachers need some type of structure to figure out, because if you go into a classroom and you say, okay, just go into small groups. Well, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, but it can be very difficult for teachers. But you have this Math Workshop book. So let's go there. Like, talk to me about this book, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. So many years ago, I was a math coach in a building, and I went to a conference, and I honestly was kind of in a negative space about, like, there are all these resources out there for this subject and this subject and this subject, but, we're throwing these textbooks that, tell us how to teach math, and none of it matches like anything that's going to help me help kids. And, I guess I was, doing some complaining.
You were frustrated.
I wasn't moving into problem solving mode. I was just kind of in complaining mode, and someone overheard me. And they said, well, why don't you write it?
Was this like a complete stranger? Or
at the time, yes. And come to find out, she works for Math Solutions Publishing Company, and she was like, here you go. Here's my card. Write the book and send it our way and see what happens, right? And see if it can happen. And, I'm on my way home from the conference, and I'm like, maybe I will write that. And I played around with it, and I will be honest, I was a very, very slow writer. I had, I had a toddler at home. I had young twins, so I had like 3 kids under the age of 4 at the time. So, I'm writing at night when I'm awake and, after they've gone to bed. So I was very, very slow. But I started to write about that transformation that I talked to you about earlier. And it was that transformation of, if my class day and like my classroom time, I only had so much, how was I going to use it so that I could get to know my students? And then once I get to know them, I'll actually have some time to do something about it. And that was so important for me. It's fine if I understood like, oh, Pam doesn't know this part, but if I still didn't have any time in my day to support you or to like do something about that, then what's the point, right?
Yeah.
I guess when you're always reliant on like the before school programs or an after school program or stay with me during lunch or an intervention block only, if you only are reliant on that instead of that time that you have with kids in the class day, we're really missing the mark. We're missing like the crucial minutes. And so in my playing around with things, I realized, one, my class day needed structure, but it couldn't always look exactly the same all the time, because every unit's different, every kid is different. And that's where I kind of landed on this math workshop model. But there are like 3 different structures it could look like, right? Like some days I might do a whole group lesson. And some days I've kind of said all I need to say for the whole group, and I have kids all over the place. I might just recapture those minutes and save them and get right into some small group work. But like what you said, doing small groups, like saying, I'm going to do math workshop, can't just happen because I say so. You have to work on establishing these routines and procedures. And I think that's part of what the book goes into, is how to establish those routines and procedures so it does run smoothly. Most importantly, so that it's sustainable throughout the year. The August me as a teacher was going to be well organized. Everything was going to go back into the right filing cabinet, right? Like I was going to have everything graded before I left on Friday so I could have my weekends. Like the August teacher me was very different than maybe like November, December, January me. And so what I wanted from that book is to establish a system for teachers so that what you start in August, it actually will work in your favor throughout the year. And things should, if you keep this system in place, it will be a better system for kids, but also a better system for you, where you'll have almost like you'll know your kids so much better, that you're planning more appropriately, that the planning gets easier, and that you have activities for kids to do that don't all require you to coming home on a Friday with stacks and stacks of papers to grade, where Sunday's blown every time, Yeah, I know that feeling. That's not a good feeling.
It's the worst. The Sunday scaries. It's the worst. It's the worst. And I know so many teachers experience that. And so a couple things. So you said, I love one of my favorite pieces about this book is what you just described, is like this, what I call a slow rollout. You might have called it something else, but here I was just thinking this in my mind. You said, but go slow to go fast. On page, I don't know what that is, Roman numeral something, but the very beginning of the book. But go slow to go fast, right? And that is so critical. Like we think about. So this episode is going to air at the beginning of the school year, and we think about how teachers are, or right before the beginning of the school year, teachers are thinking, how am I going to set my classroom up? You're doing that planning anyway. Mm-hmm. So this book gives an opportunity to really intentionally plan for how to roll out your school year and take that, I think about you're establishing the rules and the routines. If you're, let's just say, an elementary school teacher, like a second grade teacher, you're establishing how we're going to walk in the hallway. You're establishing, how we walk in, how we put our backpacks on the hooks. You're establishing all that stuff anyway. Yeah. So in that time, also taking the time to slowly roll out the expectations and the structure of what math workshop looks like, or what a math classroom should look like.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
good.
I mean, we teach so many routines and procedures, and we need to be able to help kids know, what does it mean when I say work together, right? Like, what does it mean to talk with your partner? What does it mean to work collaboratively? You know, those are important things that we can't take for granted. And it's when we do that things start to kind of get chaotic. And then unfortunately we think, oh, you know, like these kids, I love this idea, but maybe not with this group this year. Like this group is a tough one. And it's like, I would recommend that if you're feeling that way, then this is exactly even more necessary for that group.
Yes.
That this will help you with this group. It's going to help you with all groups. But if you're thinking like this group can't handle it, I would suggest we consider like this is going to be the group that will benefit the most.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is the group that probably needs to talk to one another the most. They're the ones who need to move around the most. Yep. And so just forcing them to sit in rows or even in groups, like we put our kids in groups, but we still expect the, sitting up straight and paying attention to the front of the board. That's not group work.
No.
That's not group work. Awesome. Is there anything in particular that you want to share about this book that it would be really helpful to a teacher? Yeah.
I would say that since you mentioned like this is going to air right before school starts, I would just draw your attention to step 2, whether or not if the white book that is the elementary book, and then let me see. Let me reach back here. This one is the secondary book.
Okay.
And so whether or not, like whatever grade level you're teaching, this idea, this approach is going to be helpful and supportive to make a student-centered learning environment and to help you with systems of routines and procedures that will make this doable for kids and for you. So step 2 in the book has some mini lessons to help you launch a workshop approach. It doesn't have to always happen at the very beginning of a year, but knowing like that's really a great place to go.
Yeah.
But if you're going to watch this or listen to this in December or January, trust me, you can still do these things. You just get to name the when and say, okay, I'm going to start with some of these mini lessons to help. And the mini lessons are great when you're reflecting, because let's face it, like if every lesson we ever taught worked the first time, like, wow, wouldn't that be great? And the mini lessons are the same way. I tend to reflect with teachers after the fact if they're hitting any roadblocks and they're saying, hey, I'm struggling with this part or this part. Which of those mini lessons might we need to revisit? After winter break, after a spring break, sometimes we need to go back to some of these routines and reteach. So I try really hard to consider if they're struggling with this part, maybe transitioning from one activity to another, we can go back into some of those mini lessons and help students with that, and just by revisiting it.
And how long would you say a mini lesson would take in a class period?
Yeah. So these mini lessons are not meant to replace your math class because let's face it, we don't have time to waste. We don't have time. So they're really short and it's in conjunction with the math. So you're doing some of this when you're working collaboratively and you're teaching kids to work collaboratively, we're doing it with a math activity. When you're teaching kids to talk about their thinking, you're going to do it with one of your math activities. And so really that math mini lesson is like a 10 to 15 minute, but it's overlapped with your math, because I know you don't have 15 20 days to give up and not teach math yet.
Yeah, so like here's an example on page 57. This mini lesson is called Talking About Your Thinking, which is so important. And not to get sidetracked, but I believe that math class is the place where students learn how to communicate, because there are so many things to talk about, and they really develop that space. So first I'm just going to hold the book up for anybody who's on YouTube watching. It's like a mini lesson right here. But it is supposed to be happening on day 3, but I imagine that you can maybe...
Oh yeah, you can move them all around.
Okay.
So yeah, I never feel like I need to do them in a certain order.
Yeah.
You can always combine a couple together too. If you wanted to talk about your thinking and write about your thinking, you can do that and have them write first and then talk about it. So you can always use those mini lessons in different order. It's funny because I totally agree. Math class is a great place to talk about their thinking. And I think about what I had kids talk about when I used to teach in a very traditional way.
Yes.
And it was pretty much, if I said talk to each other, they would turn and they'd be like, I got 7. What'd you get?
It's so true.
Like, that was it. Like, that's what they would talk about. Or my idea at the time was like, oh, work with your partner on this. And they'll be like, I'll do the first 10, you do the last 10. And then they'll just like copy answers. Like, not what we're going for.
No.
So if you think kids already know how to talk about their thinking and work together in math, like it is not necessarily going to be just this easy, perfect transition. So take the time, do the mini lesson, and trust me, it'll be a whole lot better.
Yes, it's so funny. I once worked with a teacher and he said, my students aren't talking. He was a 9th grade special education teacher. He said, my students are talking. I said, are you giving them something worth are you giving them something worth talking about? And he was like, ah. So like in this particular mini lesson about talking about your thinking, it's a grade 3 to 4 example. And it says, the question is, how many ways can you rename 1,265 as the sum of smaller numbers? I mean, so much to talk about there. There's no way that you can split the middle and you do the odds and I do the evens or any of that.
No.
Or this one, I have $36 in my pocket. What bills and coins might I have? So just side note, I brought that similar type of question into a 2nd grade classroom one time. Funny story is I didn't realize that the teacher, I thought I was coming in to watch the teacher, like to give her feedback. And I walked in the room and she's like, oh, here comes Dr. Brett. She's here to teach us math. And I'm like, ugh. And I actually had change in my pocket and we spent the entire 45-minute block talking about 27 cents.
Yes. But that's perfect, right? Like,
yeah.
I do. What you said, let's give them something to talk about. That's the whole idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to look back on ourselves and go, what experience did we just give them?
Yeah.
And was it worth talking about?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
Was there an answer, a way? Like, maybe we need to reevaluate that.
100%. So this leads us perfectly into something that really struck me in this book that ties into how students see themselves as math people. Okay? Because when you get kids talking in math class, you know the kids who are going to be who are like right away, like, I'll take over, you guys just step aside. But your framework helps us to provide opportunities for everybody to have a voice. But I'm going to read this off of page 15 because this struck me to the core. You write, what about the child who is good at hiding during math class? You know that child. You might have been him or her as a student yourself. That child does nothing outwardly disobedient to show that he is not listening or paying attention. That child may even make eye contact and smile. However, that child does not intend to answer any questions and often feels lost during the whole class lesson. That child chooses instead to wait it out. He waits the teacher out, and he waits out his friends. He knows that someone else will answer the question, and then he will be off the hook. He will be safe. Such a student might exhibit other avoidance behaviors like sharpening a pencil that's already sharp, throwing away a tissue that wasn't even really used, or using the restroom, even though he doesn't have to go. As teachers, we likely can identify these hiding child behaviors during our math lessons. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
So Math Workshop gives us, so let's talk about that.
Yeah. When I think about, when I said I didn't necessarily know my kids, loving them, loving what I did, loving my students, especially when I think about those first couple of years where I thought like, the sky's the limit with what we can do, right? Like, let's do it all. I wanted so badly to reach every single one of them. Yeah. But loving students isn't enough. It was like, or I guess I should say, like, loving them includes like giving them the space to talk, giving them the space to do. And I needed to change some of the framework of how I was teaching to show them just how much I cared, right?
Yes.
I had too many kids who were hiding. I had kids using avoidance behaviors. And even in a classroom where maybe people were were not necessarily acting out, or I didn't have any maybe huge behavior issues, which, we're all thankful when we just don't have that, right? Mm-hmm. I did not have students who were actively engaged. I had students who were compliant. And that wasn't good enough anymore for me. Once I started to really recognize that, once I started to realize I had kids who would look at me, make eye contact, smile, head nod. And I might even have some teachers who do that in my professional learning sessions now. Like, I'll smile and head nod at you, but okay. And they were just trying to get through the math class, right? But they've learned how to play school.
Yes.
And they've also learned that if they can just kind of hang in there a bit, somebody else will raise their hand. Or, I know that if I might get close to me needing to do something, that's when I'll go use the restroom. That's when I'll ask for the pass. That's when I'm going to I need to sharpen that pencil because I think, I'm about to be put on the spot here. Yeah, it's too many in our classroom, right?
No, and you nailed it when you said, it's how I think you love your students. We all love our students. We love the teachers that we work with, right?
Too.
But it's like how we love them.
Yeah.
Right? It's you and I both have teenagers, and I could just keep handing the credit card out or whatever, and that's not loving them.
That's
right?
not, we're not doing the right thing,
no,
right? Absolutely.
Go get a job, help do some chores, do something.
Right.
To feel like you are giving value, right?
Absolutely.
And when we learn how to love them in these ways, it really helps with their agency and their knowing that I can do this. I can talk about my thinking. I can disagree with someone.
Yeah.
I can do lots of things.
Yeah, I had a fourth grader, and when in my first couple of years of teaching, and that fourth grader really did not like math at all. Mm-hmm. And this was before or in my early stage of trying to transform into something a little bit more confident, someone who had a different structure, but I definitely was not there yet. And then I ended up moving and I went from elementary school, taught middle school for a while. I switched different grade levels, and I ended up with that same student in my middle school classroom. And he still had this real distaste for math, and he had really become even more strongly set in the idea that I'm not a math person, and no longer was doing the raise my hand and say I need help. He had pretty much shut down at this point. He's now I'm not doing anything in this classroom because I don't want to open my mouth. And I realized I was a part of that. I was a part of that, and it made it even more important for me to transform the way I was teaching and what math could look like. And so that year, I definitely landed on much more of a workshop approach. And was it perfect? No. I don't know if I'm ever going to say it is, right?
No.
We're always a work in progress.
Yes.
And that really changed things for me. And that year, I'll never forget a test he got back, and he had passed this test, and he just was so happy. And, it'd been the first test that he had passed in a while. And I realized wow, what a difference the environment can make.
Yeah.
The environment that we put kids into can make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for the teacher, right? So this is the part where I think I want to bring this full circle, is that in classrooms, we come in thinking we have to create this experience for the kids. But the more I work with teachers, the more I realize that the teachers who think, this is going to sound strange, but they think about themselves as a teacher first, and then what will work for me in this classroom. I'm not sure if this is coming out right, but what will work for me in the classroom and get what I want out of my students. Because every teacher walks into the classroom wanting their students to succeed, right? That's
absolutely.
That's why we show up every day. We don't show up for the paycheck
no.
or the work environment. We show up because we want our students to succeed and we want to make a difference. So if we want to make a difference and we want the classroom to run in a way that makes people feel comfortable and but also pushes the boundaries a little bit on their, gives students something to think about and something to talk about, we have to land on something that works for all of us.
I completely agree. And Pam, when you said that, I work, getting to work with so many teachers, like, I mean, every group of teachers I work with is doing the very best they can.
Yes.
I had amazing teachers growing up too who were doing the very best that they could, right?
Yes.
Like every teacher is doing the very best that they can. And that little tweak that we're always trying to make every single year to make things a little bit more efficient and effective. Yeah. That first, like you said, if I look at what would help me, what's going to help me is to know my kids better, right? Yes. I wanted to make instructional shifts. I wanted to be that in the moment teacher who was able to like navigate what kids knew. But when I'm not watching them solve problems and listening to them, I can't make the right adjustments.
Yeah.
I was making adjustments based on a few looks that kids were giving me, like a few that might respond. But I wasn't doing what was right by everyone because I wasn't giving them enough of a chance. I was solving so many problems. I was the one doing it, and I was asking them to write it down. Like, get that in your notes.
Oh my gosh, so much to talk about. So I'm just going to say to the listener right now, you need to go. I'll put the link in the show notes to the book for both books. But I really think that giving, having, and if you're an administrator listening to this, gift your teachers this book with Math Workshop. And I'm not just saying that because Jennifer is sitting in front of me. It's because I really think, as you can see, it's a valuable resource to just make things work in your classroom.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And one last thing I want to circle back to is you said in the very beginning of this conversation that you were teaching, I'm imagining you were teaching elementary school, so you were teaching lots of different things. And you said, I took what was working in the other subjects to bring it into math. And I think that's so key because I have a little bit of a beef that there's so much literacy PD out there and teachers, especially in New Jersey. I'm just going to call it out. We've had a lot of literacy PD and not a lot of math PD. And then we complain about the fact that, our math scores are not good. And it's not about the scores, but that's what people look at. And I'm like, okay, so put your money where your mouth is and start giving some more really valuable math PD. But you said, you said about the bringing in what worked in the other subject. So is there something specific that you can think of that was working in another subject?
Well, like one of the things that I was thinking a lot about is, in our science classroom, the kids were doing science experiments and they were doing it with a partner at their table. So they were pushing their desks together and they were setting something up and, they were looking through, like this, paper towel tube to see what was on the other side with the light. And they were using these magnets together to push and pull things. And they were doing that together. And I thought like, gosh, that experience for them was so hands-on and they were trying it out and seeing what was working. They were talking to each other and they were working with a partner. And I'm like, in my math class, like that's ideal, right? I want them to try things out. I want them to find out what works, but also what's not working.
Yes.
Where are the mistakes here? And be okay with getting that wrong. They were okay with getting it wrong in that science experiment. Yes. And like, oh, I made this hypothesis and it was incorrect and now I'm going to try again. And that seemed okay, but that doesn't seem okay in math. That conversation and them working and touching all the stuff. And I thought like, gosh, I don't give them enough time with the manipulatives, give them a chance to just play with it for a little bit and then dive in, just those pieces that I felt like were so important. I wasn't putting into place with math.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
So that was, I feel like that small group work was really common at the time. Like I would have a writing conference with a student. I would sit one-on-one with a student and listen to them read to me, and I would have them go over their writing. But I wasn't having that one-on-one or small group time in my math class. Mm-hmm. But how did I get to know that student's writing and how they were reading? I listened to them. Yeah. I watched them. I watched them do it. And I needed to do that in my math class. And so I'm glad to see that so much more work has been done on that in math now. But I recognize that most people have like one teaching methods class in math in college. So that professional learning that you just talked about in math is so important because there's often one math methods class. And I'm an adjunct professor as well on the side. And I know, gosh, some of these students, They just want to do what's right in their student teaching, and they just want to do what's right in their first year of teaching. And one math methods class is only just a little scratch in the surface. So that continued professional learning and us being open to that teacher training it's imperative.
It is. They give it. We get it in every other profession, so need it in teaching. For
Absolutely.
Sure. Awesome. Okay, so I could talk to you all day. But,
I know. Thank you.
But let's get into. Okay, so I have two questions that I like to wrap up every every conversation with. So the first one, and we'll just let my dog do her little barking because my other dog is coming in the house. Okay. So the first question is, what gives you hope?
Every single time I'm around a group of teachers and I see their energy, it gives me hope. It gives me hope for the future of what math education can be like for kids. Because like you said, every teacher I meet, like they're doing everything they can.
Absolutely.
And every time I'm in front of a group of teachers, I get goosebumps. I really do. I just keep thinking like, gosh, your students are so fortunate to have you. Like, you're just amazing people. You give me hope.
That's beautiful. I love that. Awesome. And then the last piece is, what's one piece of advice that you would give a teacher as they step into this new school year in their math class?
Go slow to go fast. I say it in the book all the time, but take on one little thing. Try it out, and just be okay with it not working at first. Be okay. Like, nothing that we do works perfectly the first time. First time I tried to fry chicken, I burned it. The first time I tried to make cheesecake, it was like so watery, it didn't even I could just pour it out. The first time I try anything, it's not going to be great. And go for it anyway. Go for it.
Great advice. Well, thank you, Jennifer Lempp, for being here today.
Thank you,
Pam.
It's
been a great conversation, and I'll put all the. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Blue Sky, LinkedIn.
Great.
So definitely check me out, and I'd love to share more with you in another time.
Awesome. Same here. Jennifer Lempp, thank you so much. Go get your books, Math Workshop, and I'll put all the links in the show notes. So thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer. It was great.
Thanks, Pam. Take care.
You too. I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts and follow along on the conversation on Instagram. And remember, being a math person is all just a matter of perspective.